You've probably seen the headline: French Canadians carry diseases the rest of Canada doesn't. And the moment you read it, a certain explanation forms on its own. Small, isolated towns, families folding in on themselves, cousins marrying cousins for generations. It's a tidy story. It's also wrong. Because when geneticists actually went looking through church records 4 centuries deep, through the DNA of thousands of living people, they did not find a community carrying more bad genes than anyone else. They found something stranger, the same small handful of rare mutations appearing again and again and again. Not a cursed bloodline, a pattern, one written into a whole population by a few thousand people who once stepped off a boat, and by the quiet arithmetic of everything that happened after. Today, that pattern is strong enough that a hospital in Quebec will ask a healthy young couple a very odd question before they start a family. Not about their own health, not about their parents, about the birthplace of their grandparents. Why would that possibly matter? To answer it, we have to go back to the year 1608, and strangely enough, to a bag of marbles. Start with the paradox, because it's the part that shouldn't make sense. A genetic disease like tyrosinemia type 1 is rare almost everywhere on Earth. Across the whole province of Quebec, it appears in roughly one baby in 16,000, rare enough that most doctors will never see a single case. But travel to one specific region, the Saguenay Lac-Saint-Jean, a stretch of land north of Quebec City, and that rarity collapses. There, the disease strikes closer to one baby in every 1800, and carriers, perfectly healthy people who quietly hold one copy of the mutation, can run as high as 1 in 16. Same country, same century, a rare disease behaving like a common one. And it isn't just one condition. Cystic fibrosis, which shows up in about 1 carrier in 30 across Canada, runs closer to 1 in 15 in that same corner of Quebec. There's a neurological disease so bound to this region that its name literally contains the geography, the spastic ataxia of Charlevoix-Saguenay. 2 place names stitched permanently into a diagnosis. So here's the riddle. How does a mutation that is vanishingly rare in France, the country these families originally came from, become one of the defining health signatures of their descendants 300 years later? It can't be chance alone. It's too consistent across too many different diseases in one very specific place. Something acted on this population like a filter. Something concentrated these variants, held them in, and carried them down a narrowing set of family lines. The question is what? And the answer is not the one most people expect. To find it, geneticists did something a detective would recognize. They combined 2 archives, one written in DNA, the other written in ink. Quebec holds something most populations can only dream of, a genealogical record called Balsac, built largely from Catholic marriage registries stretching from the 1600s into the 20th century. Millions of lives linked parent to child, marriage to marriage. Lay the DNA of a living person on top of that paper trail, and you can suddenly ask a question that used to be impossible. Which ancestor carried this? Which branch of the tree first brought this variant into the family? And when they did, the cousin marriage theory quietly fell apart. The records simply don't show unusual rates of close relative marriage in the Saguenay, no more than the rest of Quebec. Inbreeding was never the engine. The real mechanism has a colder, quieter name: the founder effect. Here's where the marbles come in. Imagine Europe as an enormous bag holding 10,000 marbles. A few of them are red, a rare mutation. Now reach in, without looking, and pull out just a few dozen marbles to start a brand new bag across the ocean. Most of the time, you'd draw no red at all. But by pure chance, sometimes you pull 2. And in that new, smaller bag, red is no longer 1 in 10,000. It might be 1 in 50. That new bag is New France. Between 1608 and 1759, only around 8,500 French settlers put down permanent roots here. That small group became the ancestral core of millions. Whatever they happened to carry, by luck, not by flaw, became the starting hand for everyone who came after. Then it happened again. Their descendants pushed inland down the St. Lawrence into the Charlevoix highlands and from 1838 into the Saguenay Lac-Saint-Jean. Each move was another blind reach into the bag, a smaller sample drawn from an already small sample. Geneticists call it a serial founder effect. And in the century after that settlement, the region's population multiplied around 25-fold, driven by large families, high birth rates, and relative isolation. So the red marbles didn't just survive, they were copied, thousands of times over. That is the living archive, not a curse, arithmetic. And it explains the numbers. That tyrosinemia mutation, a single change in a gene called FAH, accounts for roughly 87% of the disease-causing mutations in French-Canadian Quebec. One founder variant echoing down 300 years of family trees. And behind every one of these numbers is a life. Take that disease named for the region, the spastic ataxia of Charlevoix-Saguenay. For a child born with it, balance begins slipping around the time they first learn to walk. Many come to rely on a cane or walker in their 20s, a wheelchair in their 30s. The statistic is roughly one carrier in 22. The reality is a family, watching a familiar story repeat, generation after generation. But the same tools that reveal the pattern also guard against exaggerating it. For years, Tay-Sachs disease was described as strikingly common among French Canadians, with carrier estimates quoted as high as 1 in 13. Then researchers ran a proper province-wide study across 24 years, and the real carrier rate came out closer to 1 in 200. The old number had come from a tiny, non-representative sample. A reminder that DNA doesn't only correct the old myths, sometimes it corrects the new ones we've built on top of them. So let's go back to that headline. French Canadians carry diseases the rest of Canada doesn't. Now you can hear everything wrong with it. These diseases aren't unique to French Canadians. Most exist elsewhere. They're simply concentrated here. They aren't spread evenly across all French Canadians. They cluster in specific regions and specific lineages, and newer research has traced that pattern varying right down to individual towns. And carrying a variant is not the same as being sick. Most of these conditions are recessive. A carrier is usually a healthy person holding a single silent copy, a piece of history, not a diagnosis. And that reframes the entire story. This was never about a community that did something wrong. It's about a founding population that survived. A few thousand people crossed an ocean, endured, married, raised enormous families, and pushed into hard country. The concentration written into their DNA isn't a mark of shame or isolation gone wrong. It's the mathematical shadow of endurance, a record of exactly how few they once were and how much they grew. The blood remembered the address. The genome still holds the shape of those migrations. The route from the St. Lawrence through Charlevoix into the Saguenay, clearly enough that scientists can read the map of who settled where, long after the last settler was gone. And here's the part that turns history into agency. Quebec took this knowledge and handed it back to its own people. Today, a young couple with roots in these regions can choose, voluntarily, to be screened for the specific recessive conditions their ancestry carries. That strange checkbox asking where a grandparent was born isn't a verdict. It's an offer. 3 centuries of population history folded into a single, informed choice. The truth turned out to be larger than the myth. Not a cursed people, a remembered one. Thank you all for watching. Jump into the comments with any of your questions, any of your thoughts. I don't make these videos to hand you a verdict about who you are. I make them to walk the archive with you. So tell me your family's version of the story. And if your own line runs back to Quebec, to a parish, a river town, a name nobody outside the province remembers, tell me. The stories that stick with me are the ones that decide what I dig into next. Keep it honest, keep it curious. And I'll see you in the comments.